Back to the daily grind. The channel's getting false flagged by triggered trolls, so make sure you subscribe to the new channel. Let's get to the MMA news. With Jon Jones' latest failed USADA drug test, it brings up the question, is USADA good or bad for the UFC? I mean, I see both sides of it, but so this is a debate. I'll be looking forward to the comments on this one. So let's get into the good and the bad of USADA, and we'll see if we can, get all the pros and cons out the way for the debate. So the good thing about USADA is it makes UFC a clean sport. It takes away the cheaters. It makes it a even playing field, even though, like in this situation with Jon Jones, he was able to fight and knock a guy out and then get caught for cheating. So even though it's not perfect, you can't catch all the cheaters before they actually fight, it does, the right thing will probably happen. The win will probably be overturned. Daniel Cormier will probably get his belt back. And so for people like Daniel Cormier and clean fighters, USADA, is a great thing. They're not forced to lose, and Daniel Cormier's legacy was going to be ruined by somebody who was cheating the system, who was trying to cheat. So that's a good thing about USADA. It makes the sport clean. It's fair for the guys who don't want to cheat. One of the bad things about USADA is it takes away some of the UFC's biggest stars. Huge blow as far as entertainment value is concerned. Jon Jones is probably about to get suspended again. He's been suspended before. UFC 200 got run through the drug test because Jon Jones got pulled from the fight. Brock Lesnar afterward got a drug test, so the result, was overturned. Brock Lesnar can't come back to the UFC for a Jon Jones super fight that was talked about because he would have to be clean for 6 months. Jon Jones and Brock Lesnar's never happening in the UFC now because they both have to clear USADA hurdles now. So now we'll never see Jon Jones, Brock Lesnar in an MMA fight. As to where if there was no USADA, we might have seen Jon Jones versus Brock Lesnar. Anderson Silva failed a drug test and has since been on a losing streak. I mean, he got a win, but that was controversial. Even some people believe Anderson Silva's really on a 5-fight losing streak since USADA is in the picture now. I mean, people like Frank Mir, a fan favorite heavyweight, was forced to go to Bellator. Chael Sonnen forced to go to Bellator due to USADA. I mean, that's not why they weren't forced to go to Bellator due to USADA, but they both failed drug tests, and then they never came back to the UFC. Now they're fighting for Bellator. We could have think about all these fights if there was no USADA. Frank Mir versus Brock Lesnar 3 could have been a UFC 200 on top of Jon Jones versus Daniel Cormier 2. Now, also, Anderson Silva, who knows what he would be doing if he'd still be, looking good. A lot of these guys that are talking about coming back and fighting, Chuck Liddell, I mean, just another pro of no USADA is guys can fight longer. You'd be able to see people like Anderson Silva, Chuck Liddell, and these guys fight a little bit longer into their career. Vitor Belfort, the fan favorites. Now, that's also a con because the new younger fighters, and if they're clean fighters, the fighters like Kevin Lee, if they had to go against the top lightweights of the division, late into their prime, they might never get a shot. As far as you're not going to be able to, because that's what happens whenever youth meets experience. Sometimes the youth is able to beat the experience, even though you're the better fighter and you're the smarter fighter. Sometimes Father Time catches up with you and you lose because somebody's more athletic. Now, if a guy is able to take all of his experience and, so have the mind of a 35-year-old and the body of a 25-year-old, they're probably going to be around a lot longer, but that could get stale because you probably just see someone like Anderson Silva just whooping ass and clearing out divisions, like Demetrius Johnson just clearing out divisions, and people are like, okay, no one's ever going to beat him. Or Jon Jones just clearing out divisions, okay, no one's ever going to beat him because no one can beat him, and we don't have to worry about him getting old and getting beat because he's going to have testosterone. So that's a good reason for USADA to be here, to allow the younger fighters a chance to beat the more experienced fighters. Vitor Belfort would be fucking kids up coming into the UFC, young welterweights, or middleweights. He'd be fucking them up, or even light heavyweights. What about Gegard Mousasi over there in Bellator? He's never did PEDs, never been caught for PEDs to my knowledge, but he's coming up. He's about, I don't know his exact age, but I know he's like 35 years old, 32 to he's above 32. So what if Gegard Mousasi at 35, 37 years old starts taking testosterone or whatever to renew his youth? That's not fair for these guys. If the GOATs are able to fucking cheat. So I mean, I'm happy with USADA. I'm just thinking, is it bad for the company? Is it bad for the bottom line? Is it bad for it, or is it bad for entertainment or good for entertainment? Would it be boring to see John Jones beating everybody's ass and Anderson Silva beating everybody's ass till he was 40 years old? Or is it better to see the belts change hands? Is it better to have Brock Lesnar, or is it bad for the UFC to not be able to have Brock Lesnar come back in super fights with Brock Lesnar and John Jones due to the USADA hurdles? Or would they make more money with no USADA and having fucking UFC 200, John Jones versus Cormier 2, Brock Lesnar versus Frank Mir 3, just a fucking monster card that can't happen due to USADA? Think about that. Frank Mir, Brock Lesnar 3 on the same card as Jones Cormier 2. That would have happened UFC 200 if there were no USADA. USADA got Frank Mir first, so Brock Lesnar had to fight Mark Hunt. Then USADA got John Jones, so fucking Daniel Cormier had to lay on top of Anderson Silva. That pissed a lot of people off. That fucked up the card. And then Brock Lesnar popped afterward to even put a bigger stink on UFC 200. UFC 200 could have been one of the craziest cards in history, and it literally got demolished by USADA. Like fucking demolished. Whew, that's crazy. So that's the debate here. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is USADA good for the UFC, bad for the UFC? I think I'm leaning toward good, but what about the bottom line? I think it's good for the UFC, good for the fighters, but what about the bottom line? What about as far as the company? It might be bad for the bottom line just to take away super fights like Frank Mir versus Brock Lesnar 3 or John Jones versus Brock Lesnar and stuff like that. But at the same time, it could be good because, like I said, it could be good for the bottom line because how many people are going to buy a UFC just to watch John Jones beat 20 more people? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it is fun to watch. Hardcore MMA fans would like it, but maybe USADA is good for the bottom line as well. So I think USADA is a good thing, but let me know what the fuck you think about it in the comments. I know if you're a huge John Jones fan or a Brock Lesnar fan, you're probably feeling like fuck USADA at this point. So it is what it is. Let the haters know what the fuck you tell me in the comments, dude.